Shadow Hack. Chapter 41, Violent Blade Critical Leap Strike. Ding! You have beheaded the opponent and absorbed 98 space elements. Once he chopped Tang Ruokan into two, the system notification immediately echoed within Li Yunmu's mind. Hearing this, he couldn't help but reveal a trace of astonishment. So many? Even more compared to Chu Qingyu, who possessed dark flux energy. System, you haven't made a mistake in calculation, right? The opponent killed by the host had profound flux energy. Although the quality of the flux energy couldn't compare to dark flux energy, but the overall amount of opponent's flux energy was enormous. Because of that, the host has altogether absorbed 98 space elements. System's data is correct. So this was the case. Li Yunmu revealed a smile while pondering over it. Apparently, by challenging opponents with high flux energy, the overall amount of flux energy could make up for the deficiency in quality. This Tang Ruokan's flux energy was quite profound. This point wasn't wrong. The battle strength of his formidable arms was astonishing. He was the most powerful opponent Li Yunmu had encountered. Even though he had a terrifying defense, he still didn't dare to take the attack of the opponent's battle skill head-on. From this, it could clearly be seen how formidable the opponent was. After figuring out everything, Li Yunmu didn't stay on the battlefield by himself any longer, and instantly, his shadow disappeared. At this moment, the crowd of 1,000 people, which had initially come to watch Tang Ruokan, exploded like a pot of boiling water. Tang Ruokan, who was regarded as the most promising candidate for entering top 10 most powerful in Heavenly Cloud City for this year, was surprisingly defeated by an unknown challenger. Moreover, the flux energy cultivation of this person was surprisingly only an ordinary crystal flux disciple. This news spread like wildfire, sweeping everything in its way. Perhaps this battle of the newcomer considered to be most promising to enter top 10 most powerful didn't count as anything in the huge central continent, but when anyone from the Heavenly Cloud City heard this news, they were completely shocked. Lucky Wind City, when has such a terrifying newcomer appeared at that place? Regarding this point, perhaps when the Fluxer Guild of Lucky Wind City hears this news, they would also be paralyzed on the spot. Li Yunmu left the current battlefield after absorbing nearly 100 space elements during the battle. Today, he had really tasted and loved the flavor of such shortcut to quickly obtain space elements. Thereupon, this guy once again concentrated his gaze on that banner flickering with golden light, which contained the list of candidates hopeful of entering top 10 most powerful. When he looked at this list, which was so eye-catching that even if you don't want to see but still have to look, a smile spread across his face. He hadn't expected that by the time the battle was over, 2 more people from the list of top 10 most powerful would also come online. S.H.A.C.K. Cultivation of half-step into Silver Crystal Flux Disciple, Armored Soldier Class? Interesting, it will be you. Next instant, Li Yunmu initiated a challenge against this S.H.A.C.K. without any hesitation. Perhaps because of the effect of defeating Tang Ruokan in the battle, this time, Li Yunmu didn't have to wait for a long time. Soon, the opponent agreed to take his challenge. Because Li Yunmu had taken the initiative to challenge, thus, he also had the right to choose the battlefield. Location, Wrestling Ring. Equipment, Armored Soldier's Battle Armor. Weapon, Titanium Alloyed Heavy War Blade. Confirm. Next instant, Li Yunmu was transported to the dimensional battlefield. This time, he had intentionally chosen this wrestling ring as the location for battle. The whole wrestling ring had a radius of 15 m, thus, as soon as these two were delivered here, they could clearly see and size up their opponent. Are you the one who defeated Tang Ruokan just now? The opponent had a robust and tall stature. After adorning the armored soldier's armor, his height crossed 2 m. He held a heavy sword in one hand and a heavy shield in the other. This kind of equipment was precisely the one most suitable for armored soldiers. S.H.A.C.K's whole body gave a sensation of stableness like a mountain. On the contrary, although Li Yunmu had also chosen the armored soldier's battle armor and a thick blade was hanging at his back, what about the shield, you say? Haha, that would be embarrassing to carry around. Since he had a triple-layered defense, it wasn't necessary. Cut the crap, let's fight. Compared to opponent's dignified tone, Li Yunmu didn't think much about it. Furthermore, he also didn't need to care about his image right now since he was presently using the assumed name of Li Yun with the Shadow's avatar. So even if the brain of this virtual dimension world detects some abnormality, it still wouldn't be able to find his real identity. Thus, Li Yunmu didn't talk any nonsense and immediately pulled out his heavy war blade. Threatening battle intent originated from the charge of the opponent. The distance of several tens of meters was crossed in a blink. Soon, both of them heavily clashed. Compared to Tang Ruokan, although this time's opponent wasn't any weaker, the core path of his class made sure that he wasn't much of a threat to Li Yunmu. Against the defenses of a frontline meat shield, you could always count on the fact that regardless of how much damage he takes, it still wouldn't be enough. Thus, this battle which pitted armored soldier against armored soldier, was the most straightforward battle Li Yunmu had fought after a long time. None of them used any fancy tricks and just clashed, directly staking their body defenses. In this aspect, Li Yunmu simply wasn't concerned with the opponent's attack having Admiralty cover, armored soldiers' battle armor and copper body secrets. With the 3 layers of defense acting as one and the significant improvement of 2 transformations in his defense, he didn't block any of the attacks and without caring for anything else, directly used his violent blade towards the opponent. First strike, second strike, 7th strike, 12th strike. Indeed, worthy of being an armored soldier chosen to enter Heavenly Cloud City's top 10 most power, S.H.A.C.K was the first person who had completely resisted his violent blade's 12 stacked chops. However, it wasn't of any use, since if the first 12 stacked chops couldn't break your tortoise shell, then what about the second time? If the second time didn't work, then came the third time. Li Yunmu, who possessed excellent movements and didn't lack nimbleness, unleashed Violent Blade again in the next instant. Violent Blade, Violent Blade. Violent Blade. Again and again, the same cycle continued without end. Li Yunmu's blade continued to flash around the whole time, suppressing the opponent by violently attacking like the howling winds and torrential storm. But when the battle had lasted for 3 minutes and 17 seconds, at that instant, bang! Following Li Yunmu's heavy chop, S.H.A.C.K, who had been bitterly resisting from the start, saw his shield being hacked to fragments by the 12 stacked chops of Li Yunmu's violent blade. The battle continued. After losing the protection of his heavy shield, even if S.H.A.C.K had astonishing defense and armored soldiers' battle armor, under Li Yunmu's thunderous chops, he finally followed Tang Ruokan's footsteps. Within a moment, Li Yunmu once again connected a heavy leap strike while executing the 12 stacked strikes of violent blade, ruthlessly cutting the opponent into 2 halves together with his armor. At some point in time during the battle, several thousand people had already filled the surroundings of the battlefield. When all of them witnessed the most powerful armored soldier S.H.A.C following after Tang Ruokan's footsteps and being hacked into nothingness by Li Yunmu, they immediately raised a commotion, and within a brief few minutes, another one of the current 10 most powerful had been chopped down by this Li Yun. Compared to the extremely intense and ruthless battle with Tang Ruokan, this battle was even more berserk. The entire time, Li Yunmu continued to strike again and again, suppressing S.H.A.C to the point where he didn't have the slightest chance to retaliate. It was not that this opponent wasn't formidable, rather, the opponent was a frontline meat shield, so compared to Li Yunmu's terrifying defense, S.H.A.C's attacks were powerless. Completely crushed. This battle had produced 92 space elements for Li Yunmu. Ding! You have defeated the opponent absorbing 92 space elements. Ding! Because of your repeated use of Violent Blade skill, Violent Blade skill's proficiency has increased by 41 points. Your Violent Blade skill had been promoted to 3rd level. Your understanding regarding Violent Blade has already reached the realm of mastery. Ding! During the battle, you have integrated Violent Blade and Leap Strike foundation skills together, obtaining initial understanding of the Violent Blade Critical Leap Strike battle skill. This battle skill should be classified as boosting and concluding skill, thus, it doesn't require to be upgraded. Its strength will amplify with increase in host's cultivation of flux energy as well as increase in comprehension of Violent Blade. Requesting host to continue with unrelenting effort. Chapter 42, Great Transformation. Dong dong dong. Sounds of something being tapped came from outside. After his first battle with Tang Ruokan and second battle with Ba Xiong, Li Yunmu, that's wrong, correctly speaking it was Li Yun, now had his game face on and was overflowing with killing intent. Now, Li Yun was ready to go challenge the third candidate from the list of 10 most formidable. However, by this time, Big Xiong and others had woken up. Unintendedly, he hadn't slept the whole night until the morning sun rose, shining brightly. Now, Li Yunmu could only lay down his plan to consecutively challenge the contestants in the list of current top 10 most powerful of the Heavenly Cloud City. For the time being, everything had to be dropped. When he quickly logged out of the dimensional battlefield, he discovered that his followers had risen from 0 people to 3,700 people at some point in time. Moreover, this was increasing very quickly. Li Yun's personal inbox had also been crammed with fans who had just started paying attention to him. Messages were filling the inbox like snowflakes falling down, causing Li Yunmu to have his hands full for some time. He randomly pulled out 10 messages to check. Holy H.A.C.K, this bro is too awesome. I now have many female fans, Li Yunmu felt pleased with himself. He had heard elders before Dark Ages had the heritage of groups of proud fans, will this bro also have to learn from them? However, reality then ruthlessly struck him. Regardless of how many fans the shadow had, his secret couldn't be revealed. His bubble burst and reality became apparent to Li Yunmu, really my dog S.H.A.D.W, luck, all this was just empty happiness. Among the 10 incoming letters that he picked up, most were from female fans. Hi Li Yun, you are very handsome and too strong. Hi Li Yun, you are very charming, I have already fallen in love with you. Apart from attracting a large number of female groupies, he had also attracted a large number of haters like, if you have the courage then accept my challenge. H.A.C.K. Li Yunmu's mood was still good previously, but after looking at this, he was startled. It seems like scaling the height of his shadow according to golden proportions was just asking for trouble. Not only he had attracted many girls who could look but not eat him, he had also provoked the hatred of many oxen one. However, this also wasn't completely unbeneficial for him. It's reported that if the number of your followers could reach more than 10,000 people, then you could start charging fees to people coming to watch your battles. At least this could provide him a way to earn money. Currently, Li Yunmu lacked almost nothing, the only thing he lacked was money. He dreaded poverty. Just when he was about to close his inbox, among the messages, one caught his attention because the name of the sender was Chu Qingyu. He couldn't help his curiosity and opened to take a look. After opening it, he surprisingly discovered that the other party was asking where had he learned his blade skill from. At this moment, a strange smile made its way on Li Yunmu's face. His violent blade skill had come from his comprehension of Chu Qingyu's 1000 cuts 36 forms. Thus, some characteristics of his violent blade would naturally be identical to Chu Qingyu's battle skill. In both these skills, the might of each strike steadily increased compared to previous one, with its last strike's strength unleashing astonishing might. According to Li Yunmu's estimates, Chu Qingyu's 1000 cuts 36 forms battle skill was certainly an A-grade flux skill or maybe even higher. However, when all was said and done, Li Yunmu's violent blade had many differences compared to Chu Qingyu's 1000 cuts 36 forms. If the essence of violent blade comprehended by Li Yunmu was the superposition of strength of successive chops, then the latter was more focused on speed. Furthermore, the most optimum weapon for executing the violent blade skill was a heavy war blade, while other parties' 1000 cuts 36 forms restricted the weapons used to a pair of short blades. So, Even if Chu Qingye was suspicious, she wouldn't dare to claim that Li Yun's violent blade skill was copied from her family's consummate skill that was passed down since ancient times. Hence, seeing this question, Li Yunmu laughed and didn't provide any answer to the girl. After all, his present avatar was that of the shadow, Li Yun, and not he himself. By the time he completely logged out of the virtual dimension world, the idiot trio led by Big Xiong were up with their faces glowing. Brother Thin had set up a large cauldron to cook some meat soup. When Big Xiong saw Li Yunmu come out of the room, he excitedly walked to him and patted his shoulder firmly. Big Xiong then asked with a glowing face. "Friend, what grade is your innate talent?" At Li Yunmu's earlier good mood had been completely ruined. At this moment, he really wanted to beat this fatty to death. Did he really need to mention the pot that doesn't boil? Don't talk about it, it's only 7 points, lower mid-grade innate talent. What about you all? Li Yunmu unhappily replied. Haha, this elder brother has 2 points lesser compared to you, roughly at 5 points, which is classified as high-grade innate talent. When Big Xiong saw Li Yunmu's bitter face, he immediately laughed, feeling proud of himself. Even though Li Yunmu's battle strength was more formidable compared to these 3 weirdos, in the field of innate talent, Big Xiong had one-upped him. 5 points innate talent? You have 5 points innate talent? Stop joking. Li Yunmu almost jumped on the spot. Then what about Brother Thin and Crooked Teeth? I have 6 points, high, only a little lesser compared to you. Crooked Teeth pretended to sigh in despair, but the vulgar and complacent look on his face almost forced Li Yunmu to walk away. Even Crooked Teeth had 6 points innate talent? Was there still any justice in this world? Brother Mu, I have the same as you, 7 points. Brother Thin was the only sincere person here and hadn't gone to rub salt on Li Yunmu's wound. How is this possible? You all used dimensional crystals to awaken flux energy, how can your innate talent be higher compared to me? Li Yunmu couldn't believe this. It is not that unusual, many of their ancestors had previously been a fluxer, they have inherited some of their ancestors' bloodlines. Although they couldn't naturally awaken, on the aspect of innate talent, your background truly couldn't compare to them. This time, Ling Shuang walked over while carrying her large sword. She arrived at Li Yunmu's side to stand but kept her gaze concentrated on him. What's up? Is there something on my face? Li Yunmu asked, unconsciously moving his hand to his face. Within one night, your presence seems to have become stronger. Ling Shuang calmly replied while watching him. Isn't this normal? Yesterday, I used 5-dimensional crystals to open more than half the celestial point. Li Yunmu replied without batting an eyelid. You have also grown 3 centimeters since yesterday. Don't tell me that opening a flux point can also increase your height. Ling Shuang remained unmoved. What? I have grown 3 cm. Li Yunmu was stunned. He immediately measured his height again. Ling Shuang's words were correct, he really had grown 3 centimeters overnight, from 1.75 m yesterday to 1.78 m today. This discovery made him both elated and frightened. Could it be that the 10th layer transformation of copper body secrets could also increase his height? As time passed, no one attached much importance to the incident of Li Yunmu's height increasing overnight. After all, he was only 17 years old now, so he would still continue to grow. Apparently, Ling Shuang could also see that Li Yunmu didn't have any idea about this change and thus didn't raise any more suspicions. Shortly after eating the breakfast, everyone once again began to search for dwarf witch monsters to hunt. However, Li Yunmu and his squad didn't know that during the past few hours, the matter of 2 of Heavenly Cloud City's current top 10 most powerful, Tang Ruokan and Ba Xiong, being defeated had spread through the entire city, causing a large commotion. Nowadays, Li Yun's name could also be heard to some extent within other secondary cities. When the Fluxer Guild of Lucky Wind City heard this, they were extremely shocked. When had their small region given birth to this mysterious newcomer? Chapter 43, Entrancement. The second day of killing monsters. Big Bear Battle Squad's efficiency in killing monsters had clearly increased a lot compared to yesterday. The ones who made the most progress was the Idiot Trio. After opening their flux points according to their respective paths, today, their offense had become even more potent. Four-Eyed Brotherthin had opened the pom-pond point 1 of the right hand, and every time he threw with his flux strength, it caused purer flux energy to come out, which greatly increased the destructive power of the spinning beheader cross. The damage caused by the current spinning cross beheader hardly seemed any weaker than Big Xiang's flux power-infused machine gun. Crooked Teeth Xiang's speed and jumping power had become even faster and agile. He had opened the foot C.2. Now, if Li Yunmu didn't fully use his insect step, then he would gradually fall behind Crooked Teeth Xiang and wouldn't be able to catch up to him. Naturally, all these estimates were based on Crooked Teeth's hunter equipment, otherwise, how could Crooked Teeth Xiang's speed be comparable to the peerless insect step? However, Big Xiang had changed his battle style today. When the dwarf witches were some distance away, this guy would open fire with his machine gun. But when the monsters come close, he would pull out a broadsword used by Terminators in close combat and would rush to engage with them without any hesitation to make up for that position's role. Today, the performance of this idiot trio had greatly startled Li Yunmu. After opening their flux energy points, not only had their battle strength swelled up. Additionally, they have also realized how to fight as a team and had made rapid progress. Unintendedly, at some point in time, the originally weak Big Bear Battle Squad had slowly matured. Learning their lesson from yesterday's battle point distribution, these three were currently not only dealing heavy damage, but they had also gradually learned to earn the battle points belonging exclusively to the mastery of their roles. If Li Yunmu still wished to obtain the most amount of battle contribution rate, then today, he would have to use some of his true strength. Otherwise, obtaining more earnings would be difficult. Ha ha ha, little Mew, if you still think that you can obtain almost half of the total earnings today, then dream on. Take a look at my backstab attack. Crooked Teeth Xiang moved around the peripheral edge of a group of blade dwarf witches. He would occasionally run far away and occasionally quickly enter the battlefield and sneakily stab some pitiful blade dwarf witch using his sharp bayonet before quickly escaping. Today, this guy could be considered to have thoroughly researched the hunter class. No wonder Crooked Teeth Xiang chose the hunter as his dominant class. His wretched and repulsive appearance perfectly concurred with the most suitable appearance for hunters. Furthermore, the Terminator Big Xiang was serving as the second front line of defense today. Relying on the heavy silver base armor for the Terminator, he took care of part of the front line which belonged to Li Yunmu. Moreover, from time to time, he would also become a tracker and switch back to his machine gun to bombard a few scattered blade dwarf witches who were fleeing and kill them. Only Brotherthin remained unmoved at the rear guard. He was sincerely throwing his spinning beheader cross which he could eject very slowly to behead dwarf witches one by one. But even then, after he opened the pom-pond point, the damage dealt by him had greatly swelled compared to yesterday. Li Yunmu, Big Xiang, Brotherthin, Crooked Teeth Xiang, these four seemed to be bursting with energy today, as if they had sworn the oath to fiercely compete to earn battle contribution points. As for Ling Shuang, she was still like yesterday and would only shoot down the vicious poison arrow dwarf witches who were lying in wait to ambush them and hadn't deliberately entered this fight between founders. When Li Yunmu checked the squad's current battle contribution points, he was stunned. The idiot trio of Big Xiang seemed to be on drugs. Today, his battle contribution percentage had declined substantially. Yesterday, he alone held 43% of the battle contribution out of 100. Today, he was only at 32%, a full drop of 11%. Ling Shuang's battle contribution was also the same and had gone down. However, he was glad to see such thing happen. Although his battle contribution percentage had gone down, the idiot trio had finally become rational. Their efficiency in killing monsters had increased a lot today. With just this morning, everyone had unwittingly killed several hundred dwarf witches. But who knows how many dwarf witch tribes existed within these mountain ridges. Regardless of how many they killed, the number of tribes never seemed to decrease. Violent blade, leap strike, arrow evasion, cricket cut kick, leap strike, violent blade. With the idiot trio lightening his burden, Li Yunmu decided to change his style and increase the proficiency of his battle skills. He was even conveniently practicing stacking battle skills. However, because his violent blade skill had already leveled up yesterday and reached the 3rd layer, experience makes things easy. Li Yunmu's current rate of killing monsters hadn't slowed down in the least compared to yesterday. Rather, when he got more and more proficient with stacking battle skills, to the point that his body gradually remembered and instinctively executed these skills. Soon, the trio of Big Xiong finally discovered something was fishy. Fuck me, little Mew, your battle contribution. Why has it increased slightly? My god, you freak, you are killing monsters faster and faster now. You have become more and more adept at using this set of skills. Will you even allow others to live? After practicing from morning to afternoon, Li Yunmu honed this combination of foundation skills to the point of turning it into his battle instinct. In the eyes of the idiot trio, the set of foundation skills displayed by Li Yunmu, however, didn't have much formidable strength. The effect also appeared to be mediocre and wasn't as illustrious as famous battle skills used by others. Even the violent blade, which was the most powerful among these, only had the strength of a C or B grade battle skill. However, when afternoon arrived, they sensed something was odd. While Li Yunmu had been practicing to stack these battle skills and was playing around, his rate of killing monster gradually started to rise. Even Ling Shuang, who had been silently killing the poison arrow dwarf witch waiting to ambush them, also had a hint of astonishment appear on her face. Perhaps rookies like the idiot trio couldn't understand the significance of stacking these purely basic skills, but she could barely make out that it wasn't that the strength of these foundation skills was great or their results weren't outstanding. Rather, this guy was concealing his true strength and basically hadn't used his full strength to show the true level of these foundation skills. Indeed, as she thought, Li Yunmu naturally won't use his full strength to execute these foundation skills comprehended through the system in front of these guys. Like insect step, this skill could allow him to travel a distance of several meters in a flash, but he was taking it easy by only using 2/3 of its true strength. Facing these blade dwarf witches attacking with their short knives, he only needed to move horizontally to dodge. Like leap strike, if he used this skill to its limit, then he would need to jump at least 3 m in the air and then draw support from Earth's gravity and his own weight, as well as using his arm strength to explosively boost its power and land a heavy chop. But right now, he was only using his arm strength. He would just leap lightly and then quickly move towards the enemy in front of him to land a heavy chop. Although the strength used was light, his speed was very fast. His movements were also quick. The killing strike also moved swiftly to perfectly seize every chance in the battle. This made it seem abundantly strong. Even Violent Blade was also being used like this. The 3rd level of Violent used 15 consecutive chops, but right now, he was only using 7 consecutive chops. Sometimes quickly, sometimes gently, and sometimes swiftly. Apart from its might being less than when used in peak condition, the attack of these consecutive strikes was quite swift and fierce. Killing these dwarf witches didn't even require 7 strikes, they would mostly be killed within 2 or 3 strikes. There hadn't been a single blade dwarf witch who was capable of enduring the swift and violent 7th chop. Violent blade, leap strike, arrow evasion, cricket cut kick, leap strike, violent blade. The cycle continued throughout the whole afternoon, and these stacked foundation skills became increasingly more coherent and smooth, turning more and more into his instincts. Gradually, when he fully used these foundation skills, they appeared to have become one with him. Previously, by relying on Admiralty cover and activating Copper Body, he could confront at most 10 blade dwarf witches surrounding him. But now, relying on this set of skills, he could directly confront the assault several times more monsters head-on. Not enough, Crooked Teeth, attract more. Still not enough, Crooked Teeth continue attracting more and also add a few more blade dwarf witches. This still won't do, their numbers are still very few, we need to attract a bigger group. At dusk, when the color of sky began to change, the trio of Big Xiong was stunned. Crooked Teeth Jiang, who was acting as the vanguard to draw the monsters, had a bitter smile on his face and could only put forth a brave face while trembling with fear and attract an increasingly larger number of monsters. All this was the result of this guy, Li Yunmu, becoming completely absorbed in the training of this set of foundation skills. At this moment, Li Yunmu had already entered an extremely profound stage. You heard his words, don't interrupt his training, quickly attract monsters. Ling Shuang had also stopped and after some thinking, said to Brother Thin. You also go help Crooked Teeth in attracting monsters. Gradually, Li Yunmu's body, surrounded by a group of blade dwarf witches, seemed to be dancing on the tip of the blades. The combined application of arrow evasion and insect step seemed to have accomplished what he wanted. He would always move around freely and easily, he would always dodge the attack of monsters through a hair's breadth and then would always nimbly and swiftly follow up with the combination of skills, violent blade, leap strike, cricket cut kick and then again, the violent blade's heavy chops would kill large number of dwarf witch monsters. He had just gone on a killing spree within a community of monsters. Moreover, confronting the dwarf witches, his kill count continued rising from 10 then to 15, 20, 35 and still rising. Unconsciously, all of them stayed their hand and began to watch this guy, who was surrounded by dwarf witches, harvesting their heads, one after another like an envoy of death. Ling Shuang also stopped killing the ambushing poison arrow dwarf witch, which led to them also adding on to Li Yunmu's blockade. However, Li Yunmu, who was in a kind of entrancement state, seemed to be assisted by heavens itself. When a large number of poison arrows were launched towards him, he would subconsciously dodge them all. From time to time, he would lightly step away, causing the incoming poison arrow to hit the blade dwarf witch pouncing on him. When he would be attacked by several poison arrows from the right side, Li Yunmu would slightly move away and flee using insect step. This would make the poison arrow fall on several blade dwarf witches standing behind him. Abnormal, this guy is just moving against the flow. Impossible, didn't Yunmu only have a middle grade innate talent, then how can he reach this level? The idiot trio of Big Xiong was completely stunned with an incredulous expression on their face. Entrancement, it is the entrancement realm. This Li Yunmu had surprisingly entered the legendary Battle Sage Entrancement, the Battle Sage Entrancement realm which anyone rarely encounters in 100 years. Oh my god, a newcomer Fluxer has been able to enter the Entrancement realm, quickly go and inform the Lord Sage. Not only the idiot trio, even Ling Shuang was completely stupefied. At this instant, in the sky above the mountain ridges, a fist-sized dimensional space eye, which had already entered stealth mode, was secretly recording everything. No one knew that Li Yunmu's fight alone here at this moment had startled several people at the Heavenly Cloud Fluxer Guild. Chapter 44, Maintaining Secrecy. Big Bear Battle Squad's data regarding today's training has come out. Elder, this is Big Bear Battle Squad's data regarding today's training. This is the genuine information of Big Bear Battle Squad recorded by the Dimensional Space Eye today. This has something to do with the information of Li Yunmu battling by himself. This is Li Yunmu's family background and related people's background profile. At this moment, within the Heavenly Cloud Fluxer Guild, several people were quickly moving around. Some time ago, when the Dimensional Space Eye had gone to investigate the Big Bear Battle Squad of Lucky Wind City, it happened to arrive at the exact moment when Li Yunmu was battling by himself and had entered the Battle Sage Entrancement realm. Now, the core members of the entire Fluxer Guild was swiftly collecting all information about this matter. Good work. Just now I have sent the information to Lord Sage. Lord Sage has commanded that today matter regarding Li Yunmu entering the Battle Sage Entranced realm should be strictly guarded without any data regarding today's training leak. If someone among you leaks the information, then I believe everyone knows what will happen to him. I don't think I need to say anything. Lord Manager meaningfully swept his gaze over all the core investigators. Yes, we will all forget everything related to Lee Yun-mu's investigation today. The few investigating commissioners all quivered once they thought of what could happen to them if they went against the command of that Lord Sage. They immediately bowed their heads and declared, "Lord Manager, could it be that Lord Sage has really taken fancy to this Lee Yun-mu? But he only has 7 points innate talent, his future path to becoming more powerful will continue to become increasingly more difficult." When the few investigating commissioners were fearfully withdrawing from the secret room, a female secretary sitting near Lord Manager cautiously asked, "Humph, what do you know? For a youngster who can enter Battle Sage Entrancement realm, what level of innate talent he has isn't important. What's important here is that he already has a bit of chance to enter the Battle Sage class." Lord Manager flicked his sleeve. "Good, for now, publicly announce that the investigation related to Big Bear Battle Squad's abnormal situation has been concluded and all the data regarding Big Bear Battle Squad had been found to be normal." As the manager of this Heavenly Cloud Steel Fortress's Fluxer Guild, his sentence directly overruled all the doubts and questions. Only he alone had the authority as well as qualifications and confidence to do so, because behind him stood the most honored and glorified Supreme Lord of Heavenly Cloud City. What if it attracts more doubts and questions from these people? But we also cannot reveal the truth regarding Lee Yun-mu. I am afraid these jealous fools won't sit still. The secretary asked hesitantly. Then clear the doubts of those people, tell them the Lord has decided, and see which small town representative still dares to question. At this moment, within the hall of Fluxer Guild, all the other cities' representatives were still attentively observing the ranking list of military successes by killing monsters. What made even more people surprised was that the ranking of the team from Lucky Wind City, which was rumored to be cheating yesterday, had risen again. After advancing to the 70th position yesterday, today, it had risen 6 ranks, forcibly cutting its path through many outstanding squads and has reached 64th position. Although it was an increase of a mere 6 ranks, it must be known that today's top 3 rankers weren't included in this. After all, today, Lucky Windy City had cut a bloody path through more outstanding cities to occupy the lead position. This is abnormal, right? After returning back yesterday, I had investigated all the contestants from Lucky Wind City, but even if we include the recently transferred Ling Shuang, they only have 1/2 silver crystal fluxer. All the other newcomers are nearly same and are at an even lower level, so what kind of secret does this Lucky Wind City have? That it is quickly surpassing our cities. That's right, in the previous years, my Shanjing City had always been ahead of this Lucky Wind City. But now, this Lucky Wind City had suddenly surpassed my Shanjing City, which was at 70th position. I do not believe this experience-gaining squad isn't using any underhanded means. Don't be noisy. Yesterday, the Fluxer Guild had sent a space eye to investigate them. So all we need to do is to wait. I believe we will have the results today. Although many representatives of other cities had been commenting on the exceptional data of Lucky Wind City, within the Fluxer Guild's hall, there was another small city which didn't care about this result. That was because the Lucky Wind City was simply unable to threaten them. Entering the top 64? Haha, it's quite embarrassing, but they were far from attracting the attention of this formidable city's top ranks. On the contrary, this year, the situation of the top 20 cities was extremely weird. The Heavenly Dragon City, which was ranked at the 7th place yesterday, had fallen out of top 10 ranks today, directly falling to 13th place, a decrease of 6 ranks. And then there was the Iron Cultivation City, which should have been at the 17th place, but they seemed as if their fluxers were all on steroids. They had been continuously climbing up ranks, directly to 7th place. Reportedly, the Iron Cultivation City had created a completely new class-specific squad. Everyone in the squad was an armored soldier. This kind of peculiarly structured squad, perhaps couldn't do anything else, but it was extremely strong in killing monsters and dimensional beasts. Apart from this, Darkside City had also risen abruptly, killing their way into top 3 ranks. There was another exceptionally conspicuous city this year, Snow City, which had attracted the concern of the representatives of many top-ranked cities. This year, under the lead of S.H.A.D.W, Snow City had killed its way into top 30 yesterday. Today, it had advanced again by full 8 ranks, almost entering the top 20. S.H.A.D.W, the only proud daughter of heaven with pinnacle grade innate talent in all the regions under Heavenly Cloud City. Moreover, it is reported that she is a divine expert who had naturally awakened her dark flux energy. It would be interesting to see if Snow City can enter the top 10 with her. Yes, this is the scariness of pinnacle grade innate talent. Presently, it is only the second day, let's wait and watch. There is a long time left to gain experience. S.H.A.D.W's personal strength should grow with frightening speed. Have you all forgotten about the existence of another pinnacle grade talent, Ling Shuang, in our Heavenly Cloud City? Oh right, the Ling Shuang you are talking about had already been taken as a disciple by that lord. However, she had entered his tutelage very late and her start was also quite late. In this year's city rankings, she shouldn't be able to cause any storms. Yes, I heard that Ling Shuang had transferred to Lucky Wind City and had entered an inferior battle squad there. Without the assistance of a good battle squad, it would be difficult for her to lead the Lucky Wind City into top 30. Forget about S.H.A.D.W and Ling Shuang, why has the 7th-ranked Heavenly Dragon City fallen out of the top 10 today? Do any of you have genuine information? Haha, you my friend are an ignorant being, you still don't know about the matter that had happened in our Cloud City's battle region in the dimensional battlefield. What happened? Don't tell me it has any relation to Heavenly Dragon City. Yes, Heavenly Dragon City's most powerful squad leader, Tang Ruoken was defeated by a mysterious rookie at the dimensional battlefield yesterday and was cut into 2 parts in front of everyone. The video of this is still being replayed at the battle region of our Cloud City. Tang Ruoken must have suffered quite a psychological shock from this event, whether he can stand back up or not, that remains to be seen. Hearing you, I also remembered something. Reportedly, this mysterious super rookie is also from Lucky Wind City, his name is Li Yun. You said Li Yun? Is he the same Li Yunmu from the Big Bear battle squad which had presently caught everyone's attention? If this Li Yunmu is really the Li Yun who had defeated Tang Ruoken at the dimensional battlefield yesterday, then I don't have any complaint against Lucky Wind City's abrupt rise in ranking. Chapter 45, Precisely this person. Both came from Lucky Wind City, their names are also nearly identical and both have a cultivation of ordinary crystal flux disciple, so we cannot rule out this possibility. I am Lucky Wind City's representative. Among the newcomers that arrived in our city this year, there isn't any person called Li Yun, but there is indeed someone called Li Yunmu. However, the difference between the height and appearance of both of them is too much. They cannot be the same person. This Li Yun should be a newcomer fluxers who is from some other place. The one saying these words was precisely Senior Tangan. At the dimensional battlefield, if you substantially change a person's appearance by 10% or more, then you cannot alter the height much. The established avatar should also be of almost the same height because a person's body structure could greatly influence his battle strength. Li Yun's height was 1.85 m. Li Yunmu's height was 1.75 m, the difference between both was around 10 centimeters, this difference certainly couldn't be disregarded. Moreover, Tangan had also secretly checked the records of Li Yunmu's logins to the dimensional battlefield yesterday. Li Yunmu hadn't entered the dimensional battlefield yesterday, thus, even if he initially had a doubt that Li Yun was really Li Yunmu, now, not even a speck of that doubt remained. Haha. Newcomer flux disciple not from your region? Your Lucky Wind City had really missed a great opportunity this time, That's sad. If this Li Yun had also been from your Lucky Wind City, then maybe these newcomers would have allowed Lucky Wind City to rise even more abruptly in the rankings, what a pity, Many people laughed heartily. Tang An's complexion turned unsightly, however, these people were also not wrong in mocking him. If among the newcomers, there was also this Li Yun, who consecutively defeated Tang Ruoken and Ba Xiong on the dimensional battlefield, then together with Luojin and Lunuja, maybe the Lucky Wind City would have amazed the world overnight. He had already decided in his heart that after returning this time, he would send this information to the president and use any means possible to find out about this super rookie Li Yun. Spirited discussions were still continuing in the hall of the Fluxers Guild when suddenly someone shouted, "Come, information related to Lucky Wind City's investigation is being publicly announced, quickly come and see." At this moment, a video of Lucky Wind City Battle Squad killing monsters today started to be played in the hall. Many representatives of different cities were observing the movements of Lucky Wind City Battle Squad led by Luojin. So it was like this Luojin indeed has the strength to become a candidate to enter our Cloud City's top 10. This guy has already opened all the silver layer flux points and maybe can also congeal the silver crystal armor. I have never paid attention to this Lucky Wind City previously. I never expected this unknown seaside small city will surprisingly be a lair of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. This Lunuja is surprisingly a light flux energy fluxer. Hi, no wonder their leading battle squad's battle success is so ferocious, so it was because of this little girl who has light flux energy. TCH, what kind of lucky streak has this Lucky Wind City encountered this year? They have this Lunuja, who has blessed the whole squad with Aqua Shield. Furthermore, she has also unleashed the Aqua Therapy technique for the entire squad. This Lucky Wind City battle squad can completely let loose in the battle. Even if Lucky Wind City has Luojin and Lunuja, they aren't capable of killing enough monsters to reach 70th position alone. Right, quickly look at other battle squads. Although Lucky Wind City has Luojin, the others didn't pay much attention to him. After all, a single tree cannot support everyone. Even though Luojin's personal strength was pretty good, he didn't have monstrous talent like Xiu, so it was foreordained that he alone cannot bring fundamental change in Lucky Wind City. Only, Lunuja possessing light flux energy made many people envious. Light flux energy, it was just like dark flux energy. However, light flux energy wasn't a destructive type flux energy, rather, it was relatively gentler and has the special power to heal the injuries and provide assistance to the team. If dark flux energy was connected with destruction and wreckage, then light flux energy was the complete opposite, it produced a ray of hope in people. From some angles, Lunuja using light flux energy was even better compared to someone else using dark flux energy for the squad. If Li Yunmu had been here, he would have certainly understood that this was the reason why Luojin had always been chasing after Lunuja. He wasn't after her but the light flux energy that she possesses. However, even then, just the existence of a super battle group which possessed both Luojin and Lunuja couldn't be the reason for Lucky Wind City's rank increasing by leaps and bounds. Thus, many people continued further by opening the videos of other squads killing monsters. The second video was of the Lucky Star Battle Squad, with Li Ziyi leading a group of boys. Although this battle squad led by Li Ziyi had more people compared to Lucky Wind City Battle Squad, their strength was mediocre and thus, was quickly neglected by people, with the only highlight being Li Ziyi herself. This girl is pretty good, Black Crystal Flux Disciple's strength, beautiful complexion, graceful body, furthermore, she also has a pair of milky white long legs, very attractive. Similarly, the Phoenix Battle Squad led by Zhang Ying formed with 5 females also had mediocre performance. What joke is this? We have already looked at 3 squads, apart from the main battle squad which had good battle strength, these other 2 squads had completely average performance. Don't tell me, that based on this kind of performance, the Lucky Wind City has entered top 70. There is still the Big Bear Battle Squad, let's check it out first. Check out what? A trash battle squad formed by rich kids, altogether it has 5 people, probably the only highlight will be Ling Shuang alone. Despite saying this, everyone still opened the video of Big Bear Battle Squad killing monsters. But just when they opened it, the types of silver base equipment clearly shown. It was the same as they had expected. This squad even has peak grade Terminator suit. My god, does this battle squad have even more reserves? However, when they saw Ling Shuang, whom they expected to be killing all the monsters by herself, standing at the back killing only poison dwarf who would suddenly appear. Most of them were baffled. Ling Shuang wasn't fighting with full strength? Then how could a trash battle squad like Big Bear Battle Squad has such high data? Even if they have 3 silver base equipment, that also shouldn't be of much help. Could it be that these complete beginners who haven't even opened one flux point could bring out the full strength of the silver base equipment? It's this person, this Li Yunmu, who is using battle soldier equipment. He by himself is handling all the blade dwarf monsters. Not only that, he is also killing all the blade dwarf monsters in front of him. Moreover, the majority of the monsters have been killed by him. What? An armored soldier is not only tanking at the front line, he is also dealing most damage. Come see, his battle contribution percentage. Heavens, he has 43% battle contribution, he has almost half of battle contribution for himself, even higher compared to Ling Shuang. How is this possible? Isn't this Li Yunmu also a complete beginner and haven't opened any flux points? How can he have such fierce battle strength? By this time, the representatives of higher-ranked cities in the hall were also attracted by the gasps of everyone. Almost everyone's focus was on Li Yunmu's battling figure in the video. Occupying nearly half the battle contribution percentage by himself, that also when there was still Ling Shuang in the squad. Such a condition had very rarely existed even in powerful battle squads. Li Yunmu's battle performance instantly attracted the notice of many people. Chapter 46, Miraculous Scenario. At this moment, Li Yunmu clearly hadn't opened any flux points completely, neither was he in the battle sage entrancement state, just relying on the battle soldier equipment to amplify his battle strength. He was still vividly displaying the violent blade, leap strike, arrow evasion, insect step, these type of foundation skills. Although they would appear to be low-grade battle skills, how could others understand the enormous potential and combat results achieved due to these foundation skills produced by the system, which he had to comprehend on his own? However, it was because of these unglamorous foundation skills that allowed Li Yunmu, by himself, to forcefully occupying nearly half the battle contribution score of the whole squad. We were mistaken, this person has unexpectedly turned out to be a battle genius. He is supporting the entire Big Bear battle squad just by relying on these trash battle skills. Yain, why do I feel like the blade skill used by him has many similarities with the violent blade used by that Li Yun? What a joke! Under the assault of Li Yun's violent blade, even the armored soldier Ba Xiong was chopped into pieces and the cross-shaped tyrannical arm skill of Tang Ruokan was broken. How could this guy's ability compare to Li Yun's violent blade skill? You're mistaken, this is indeed the violent blade skill, that terrifying blade skill used by Li Yun at the dimensional battlefield. However, this Li Yunmu only has some superficial understanding of this violent blade skill. You see, his maximum limit is only 6 strikes with this skill. Could it be that he is Li Yun's fellow disciple or perhaps his brother? He could surprisingly also use Li Yun's violent blade skill. No wonder Lucky Wind City's ranking is rising so quickly. Until now, everyone had many contradictory views regarding Lucky Wind City's abnormal data, but the emergence of Li Yunmu, who was linked with the fierce newcomer, Li Yun, silenced many of these people. Senior Tangan was gobsmacked while watching Li Yunmu go on his killing spree. He had even surpassed Ling Shuang's battle contribution. Now, Tangan finally realized that perhaps this guy was really speaking the truth and wasn't just shooting his mouth at that time. Seeing Li Yunmu's set of skills combined with the terrifying violent blade skill, Tangan realized he had indeed gone blind at that time. By this time, Big Bear Battle Squad's second day of training had ended. The number of monsters they killed today was even more frightening compared to yesterday. Altogether, they had killed close to 1,000 dwarf witches and destroyed around more than 10 dwarf witch tribes. As for Li Yunmu's battle contribution percentage, because of entering the indescribable battle sage entrancement state, he had surpassed all of them by a large margin at the later stage of the day and had obtained a 36% battle contribution. Although it still wasn't as high as the first day, it was already a frightening number. Ling Shuang was still ranked second, however, her battle contribution today had gone down by a lot, she only had a 20% battle contribution. The third was Li Daxiang with 17%, followed by Crooked Teeth Jiang with 15% and finally was K Wen, Four-Eyed Brother Thin, with 12%. He didn't have the same surname as Ling Shuang had taken her mother's surname. This time, their earnings were also comparatively higher. After killing 1,000 monsters, they had received 10 contribution points. Li Yunmu had followed his earlier choice to convert it all into money. Big Xiong immediately laughed and transferred 36,000 dimensional coins to his account. If yesterday's amount was added to it, the money that has been deposited in Li Yunmu's account had already surpassed 70,000 dimensional coins, more than his father Li Zongmin's lifetime savings. Apart from this, today, they had also obtained a total of 16 flux energy crystals, 3 more compared to yesterday. With his battle contribution, Li Yunmu had received a total of 6 crystals. If this generous harvest was made public, then today, countless other fluxers would go green with envy. However, for Li Yunmu himself, this couldn't be counted as anything. After today's fight, he had clearly realized that battling monsters while restricting himself was just a waste for someone like him who possessed the hack machine. If not for the Fluxers Guild's strict rule that no one must leave their respective battle squad during their first training expedition, he would have gone solo long ago. System, this can't continue for long. Could I only waste time when I am together with others and remain unable to use the hack machine? After returning to the fortress, Li Yunmu raised his worries towards the system, communicating in his mind. Presently, he had 3 problems in front of him. Firstly, he could not casually take out the main computer from his storage badge in front of other people and directly start the hack. This was a very grave problem. If he continued like this, the system's secret might be revealed to the whole world and disaster would fall upon him. Secondly, while hacking, he also could not appear in front of others because during that time, he had no shadow. If someone told him that he won't attract suspicion from others even without a shadow, then even a ghost wouldn't believe that person. Finally, the third problem was that if the shadow appeared in front of someone while automatically hacking and killing monsters, or perhaps it was revealed in front of others during the daytime, then what could he do? When he was using the hack at District Garden, the shadow was very small in size. Moreover, he either used it very late at night or camouflaged it under the cover of black painted objects and frequently went deep inside the grass, making it very difficult for others to spot it. Thus Li Yunmu didn't have to worry about the risk of it being discovered by others. But now, after entering the other dimension, the shadow's strength had been completely synchronized with him and thus the shadow wouldn't reduce in size anymore, becoming a big problem for Li Yunmu now. Reminder, for the second and the third problem, the system proposes that host treat the shadow as a result of using some flux cultivation battle skill. As long as others believe that the shadow is some kind of monster summoned by the host, then the above 2 problems will be solved. As for the first problem, if the host is willing to offer 100 space elements to upgrade the intelligence grade of the system, then it will completely solve the problem of inconvenience caused by the main computer. At that time, the system will directly project the hack controls within the host's consciousness. See. What? System, you mean that with only 100 space elements, you can also be upgraded? Moreover, it will also solve the problem of the inconvenience of the main computer. This time, Li Yunmu was even more surprised. Surprisingly, there is also such a function. System, why didn't you inform me about it earlier? On the lower left corner of the hack system, there is a configuration option pertaining to the system. All the procedures for upgrading the system could be found there. The host just hadn't discovered it by himself, that's all. The system ejected another notification in Li Yunmu's mind. Li Yunmu immediately opened up the main computer and sure enough the system's information was correct. On the left side corner, there was indeed a small wheel-shaped icon. He clicked on it and sure enough, there were the functions for the system's upgrade. In addition to the above, there were also marginal notes which explain things in detail. The higher the system's intelligent grade, the more perfect the abilities of the Super Shadow hack system becomes. After the system gets upgraded to the 5th level, even a function to run scripts would appear in the system. With the function to enter scripts, when the time comes, Lee Yunmyo could program a hack script and completely customize it for himself. After the system attains the state where it doesn't need anyone to command it all the time, as long as the script was sufficiently edited. Not only could the Shadow continue with the hack, it could also automatically engage in battles with Fluxers, long-range scouting, transmitting information and making calls, tracking, and even infiltrate cities to kill people and other such covered assignments. In short, with a perfect script to make it independent, the Shadow's abilities would far exceed the present where it could only engage in Shadow hack to kill monsters. Chapter 47, Crazy Ideas. Awesome, this is just too godly. He was completely surprised. Seeing that after being upgraded to the 5th level, the hack machine would surprisingly have the function of programming scripts, Lee Yunmyo almost started to cry. If he had known this earlier, then why would he be so worried? Next, he looked at the present Shadow hack machine. 100 space elements were required to upgrade its intelligence level to the 1st level. Seeing this, he directly used up 100 space elements without any hesitation to upgrade the system to the 1st grade in intelligence. Upgrading to 2nd grade intelligence required 200 space elements. Since his remaining space elements weren't sufficient, he had to drop the idea for the time being. However, the results of this time's upgrade came quickly. Within an instant, a golden light erupted from the computer and a pearl-sized golden halo suddenly sliced open the computer screen and entered Lee Yunmyo's Glabella 1. Congratulations host, the system has been upgraded to the 1st layer of intelligence. From this moment onwards, the main system will directly project an image of the hack machine within the host's consciousness. See? Done already. Lee Yunmyo couldn't believe that it would so simple, done just like this? Yes, done, just that simple. It is all thanks to the host's consciousness breaking new ground yesterday, otherwise, the main system also wouldn't be able to project controls within the host's mind. A smiley face appeared within Lee Yunmyo's consciousness. The system with a 1st grade intelligence was indeed much more formidable compared to the original one, which depended on rigid inflexible procedures of the host computer. Moreover, its manifestation had also become much more flexible. Seeing this, Lee Yunmyo's mood immediately became good. These 100 space elements were well spent. Additionally, the system's solutions to settle Lee Yunmyo's problems also made his heart throb. If he could really pass off the Shadow as his summoned monster through a flux cultivation battle skill, then even if he uses it in front of outsiders, it would be considered normal. But the only problem was whether the Fluxers in the world really have such a monster summoning flux cultivation battle skill. At this moment, Lee Yunmyo slowly opened his eyes. Even when he had crammed knowledge at the great courtyard of Lucky Wind City, he had never found anything regarding any such monster summoning flux cultivation battle skill. However, his knowledge was very limited, so was there really no such thing? For the time being, Lee Yunmyo didn't have any definite answers in his mind. After mulling for a long time, Lee Yunmyo arrived in front of Ling Shuang's door and lightly knocked. My God, it's already so late at night, Yunmyo, you are trying to sneakily enter the room of the goddess? Am I interfering something which shouldn't be known to others? There wasn't any activity in Ling Shuang's room, but Crooked Teeth Jiang's wretched voice echoed from behind him. My God, shut up, I just came here to ask for a little advice from her. Lee Yunmyo unpleasantly explained to the unwanted guest. Clearly, this guy had been waiting outside Ling Shuang's door, but was now instead bitten by him. Interfering what? You. Before long, Ling Shuang's door opened, her hair was wet. At this moment, Ling Shuang wasn't covered by the crystal armor, only a thin night cloth covered her body, revealing her seductive figure. Lee Yunmyo was still okay, but Crooked Teeth Jiang behind him was just gaping at her unblinkingly. He had never expected that this seemingly cold and thin-stature female had such impressive figure. Seeing this, Li Yunmu was completely stunned for a moment. But after the affair with Lin Li not long ago, the present Li Yunmu didn't have the mind to indulge in any such affair for the time being. Presently, he had only come to ask Ling Shuang about the problems he was facing. "I have something to ask you about," Li Yunmu replied with a straight face. "Come inside." Snap! After asking Li Yunmu to come in, Ling Shuang closed the door, giving the cold shoulder to Crooked Teeth Jiang, who was trying to sneak in with him. "This is not fair." Crooked Teeth Jiang's grieving voice came from outside. "What do you want to ask?" After asking Li Yunmu to come in, she asked him after calmly sitting on the bed. "I want to know, is there some kind of flux cultivation battle skill for summoning dimensional monsters?" Li Yunmu asked after thinking over and over again. "Why are you suddenly asking about this?" Ling Shuang was slightly astonished. "Hi, just curious, so can you tell me the truth? If it is some secret which cannot be revealed, that's fine. I can tell you, the thing you wanted to ask is related to secondary flux energy." Ling Shuang thought for a while and said while folding her arms. "Secondary flux energy? What kind of energy is this secondary flux energy? How is it different from dark flux energy?" After hearing an answer, he was immediately pleased beyond expectations. There was actually has this kind of energy? Although it wasn't some flux cultivation battle skill, as long as he had this energy, it was feasible. However, what kind of monster was this secondary flux energy? Clearly, his shallow background made him completely ignorant regarding higher types of energies. Secondary flux energy, its full name is second dimension flux energy. Fluxers that possess this kind of secondary flux energy can summon all types of life forms from other dimensions. However, among the fluxers of the Alliance, there are not many who can accomplish this. They are even rarer compared to dark fluxers. Ling Shuang was actively explaining when she suddenly asked without any warning. "Could it be that you have awakened secondary flux energy?" It has to be said that if this girl had asked this sudden probing question before he had opened his celestial flux point in the brain, then he would have been overwhelmed and maybe subconsciously blurred out his reasons. Now, however, after he had filled more than half of the celestial point, he was able to react in time. Li Yunmu only laughed slightly but didn't say anything. Secondary flux energy isn't innately awakened. Among the many flux disciples who enter the dimensional world for the first time and come in contact with the other dimension's energy, very few of them may produce secondary flux energy. Their consciousness can establish vague connections with another dimension space, and if they have some fortunate coincidence, they can even summon some kind of life form from inside. Ling Shuang continued to explain without showing any concern about Li Yunmu's response. "What? According to what you said, we all have a chance to suddenly awaken secondary flux energy." Within an instant, Li Yunmu's heart began to beat faster. If what Ling Shuang had said was true, then if he could suddenly summon the shadow and use the shadow to assist him in battle, then it shouldn't raise suspicion from other people. In this way, he could establish himself a fluxer with secondary flux energy. Instantly, Li Yunmu felt that this secondary flux energy could provide a good opportunity to resolve the problem of revealing the shadow in front of others. "Your theory is correct, we all are newly awakened fluxers and have also entered the fifth dimension for the first time. Therefore, during this time, if someone among us awakens secondary flux energy, then it wouldn't be the least bit strange. Naturally, this is only theory, after all. Those who can actually awaken the secondary flux energy are very few." Ling Shuang meaningfully glanced at Li Yunmu. Chapter 48, Escaping Calamity. Li Yunmu understood the situation properly, regardless of whether there were too many people with secondary flux energy or too few. As long as there were some, he would have an excuse which he could use later to allow the shadow to come out from the darkness into the light. However, he wanted to stay away from attention as much as possible for the time being, so he didn't immediately summon his shadow. There would be plenty of time for that later, so he didn't want to be hasty. The hack system was bound together with him now, so there was no need for him to be hasty and attract more attention of others who would pry on him. From childhood, his father, Li Zongmin, had taught him only one thing: a person must be good at enduring silently. In this world, the heavens were high and the earth was deep, one's own strength was the greatest reliance. If his own strength wasn't sufficiently strong enough to protect himself and everything by his side, then he must remain low-key and steadily continue to work hard. Although the thinking of old generation was usually conservative, this was also the path to follow in this world where the maxim of flux energy being paramount exists. Li Yunmu secretly decided that until he had sufficient strength to protect himself, he must absolutely not bring a calamity on himself because of one moment of anxiousness. After thinking about these past few days, Li Yunmu also realized that for that he had indeed lacked consideration and was frivolous. But after Ling Shuang's indifferent probe, he had been alerted. Next, he bid his farewell to Ling Shuang and returned back to his room to continue today's cultivation, making use of the time while the battle squad was resting. Yesterday, he had obtained 4 more flux energy crystals after killing monsters using the shadow hack and had completely filled his celestial point. Because of the celestial point opening completely, his arrow evasion advanced danger judgment skill was once again brought up by another level, attaining the 5th layer pure hearth fire state. It won't be an exaggeration to say that Li Yunmu's arrow evasion had already become greatly formidable and could sufficiently sense imminent dangers, turning into the most powerful life-saving skill in his present arsenal. According to the detailed analysis of arrow evasion, if this skill attains the 10th layer attaining pinnacle state, then the arrow evasion skill would undergo a qualitative change, to the extent that Li Yunmu would even be able to predict terrible dangers to him in advance. Only, as the level becomes higher, the proficiency points required to reach the next level also increases exponentially. Who knows when he would be able to practice it to the 10th layer? Regarding this, Li Yunmu wasn't anxious anymore after controlling his mental state. Apart from this, for the leftover flux energy crystals, Li Yunmu gave priority to opening the leg C point before the pom-pond point. The reason was simple: although his violent blade skill would be promoted by another layer if he had chosen the pom-pond point, by opening the leg C point first, he could put the insect step and arrow evasion, these 2 footwork skills, to better use as he would become even agiler. Also, the leap strike and violent blade critical leap strike would become more powerful with the increase in his jumping power. So his choice was obvious: violent blade skill's formidable power was fully sufficient to counter enemies at his current level of cultivation. Compared to that, Li Yunmu placed more emphasis on protecting his life. He gave priority to opening his right leg's leg C point. Originally, at noon, he had only used 1 flux energy crystal to fill it, and today, he had obtained 6 flux energy crystals, enough to completely open the leg C point of his right leg. Without wasting any more time, Li Yunmu calmed down his heart and continued. This time, his efficiency in absorbing the flux energy crystals had increased compared to yesterday: 1 crystal, 2, 5, 6 within an hour, the whole process was complete. All the flux crystals with active flux energy had been absorbed to open his right leg's leg C point. When Li Yunmu stopped his cultivation, flux energy had already begun to surge through the leg C point of the right leg. Immediately, the whole world seemed different to him. Strictly speaking, this would be considered as the genuine first step on the path of flux cultivation. Although he had opened the celestial point yesterday, opening new horizons in the mental field, it hadn't provided a great boost to his strength. But now, he possessed the strength of a first-step fluxer. The greatest difference between fluxer and ordinary people. Li Yunmu heavily stamped his legs, the flux energy quickly surged through the celestial point, bang, as if his whole body has exploded, he instantly accelerated and fiercely rushed outside. Bang, 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 he kicked the ground 3 times, accelerating to an unimaginable speed, arriving in front of a thick dried-up tree outside the fortress within a moment. The flux energy began to rotate ferociously in his body and a faint layer of flux energy could be seen wrapped around his right leg. He then heavily smashed his right leg on the dried tree. Ka-cha, rumble, a dull rumbling sound echoed and the whole bowl-mouthed tree trunk was instantly easily shattered into pieces by his right leg. This is the power of a fluxer. Too formidable. After completely opening the leg C-point, at this moment, Li Yunmu sensed an unprecedented strength in his leg. This could truly be classified as his own strength. During this period, when Li Yunmu had obtained more flux energy crystals and fully filled only the leg C-point of his right leg, the boost in his strength had been so significant. Heavens only know what level of power his body would attain after he had fully opened the 12 flux points required of the ordinary crystal flux disciple. However, even though he was knowledgeable about the transformation in the power of fluxers at every layer, he was astonished by the system's Admiralty cover, copper body as well as other foundation skills like Violent Blade, Insect Step. As these cultivation methods and foundation skills that he was able to defeat opponents who had 3 layers higher cultivation than him. As he became more and more experienced regarding the disparity between him and the others, Li Yunmu clearly felt that he must exercise more restraint in future. It seems like he must adjourn the plan of summoning the shadow using secondary flux energy in front of others for the time being. Perhaps he might not be a fool, but he must not take the entire fluxer community to be stupid. At this moment, Li Yunmu made a firm decision that he must continue to conceal himself, at least until he had obtained a certain amount of resources and backing. He must not reveal any more results of his achievements using the system. It had to be said that Li Yunmu suddenly calming down at this crucial moment had indeed saved him from a catastrophe. High in the sky at night, a dimensional space eye flying at a high altitude had been sneakily monitoring all his movements without his knowledge. And the one who had ordered it was precisely the manager of Heavenly Cloud Steel Castle's Fluxer Guild. Not correct, it would be more proper to say that behind the manager was the legendary Lord Sage. Earlier that day, the secretary of Lord Manager had guessed correctly. Lord Sage, who surpassed everyone in the Heavenly Cloud City, had indeed taken a fancy to Li Yunmu. But actually, the so-called consideration for Li Yunmu wasn't as she had thought, that Lord Sage had decided to take Li Yunmu as disciple and cultivate him after seeing him entering the battle sage entrancement state. Rather, it was to discover all the secrets hidden on him. A common youngster like him, who had a completely ordinary background that wouldn't catch the eyes of any formidable fluxer, possessed a skill like Violent Blade, which seemed ordinary but had endless potential. Considering this fact, it could be said that Li Yunmu's background might not be so simple, let alone mention the fact he had also entered the legendary Battle Sage Entrancement realm. All of these facts combined had attracted the attention of a great personality like Lord Sage. Whether this Lord Sage would succeed the Battle Sage's position or not, the answer to this question might be found on this youngster in front of him. Naturally, Li Yunmu didn't know that Ling Shuang's probing today had actually saved his life, alerting him suddenly after satisfying his ego for the past few days. This also had something to do with the arrow evasion, the skill which could sense danger in advance. It had recently reached the 5th layer, and although he still hadn't undergone the fundamental change of the 10th layer and couldn't predict danger, a trace of instinctual restlessness in his heart had allowed him to barely dodge this calamity. Chapter 49, Distress. Late at night, while Big Xiang and others were immersed in cultivation or sleeping, at this time, Li Yunmu's consciousness entered his consciousness sea and he activated the shadow and started the hack machine. After filling the leg C point, his thirst for flux energy crystals had increased greatly. Probably because of the uneasiness he was feeling, he instinctively made the decision of descending his own consciousness into the shadow. He quietly sneaked out of the fort and directly scuttled towards the hills in the darkness, feeling restless. The hack location he had settled on tonight was far away from their camp. Because of this transformation, the concealed space eye flying in the sky couldn't detect any abnormal movement. If it had been during the daytime, the shadow would probably have been exposed to the space eye's probe, but presently, it was night. The night could be said to be the shadow's home. While the shadow was moving within the darkness, let alone the space eye flying in the sky, even if someone was walking nearby and shadow remained motionless, blending completely with the darkness, no one would be able to detect shadow's existence. Under Li Yunmu's control, the shadow moved swiftly. With the strength amplification of battle soldier equipment and the boost of flux energy from the legacy point, the shadow's current speed was extremely fast. Unconsciously, he had already traveled more than 10 miles away from their camp, only then did the feeling of uneasiness in Li Yunmu's heart finally disappear completely. Okay, this place should have no problems. He gently took a deep breath and stopped. After stopping, Li Yunmu checked his surroundings and discovered that while rushing deeper, the shadow had unwittingly arrived at a place with the features of a basin. In the depression of the mountain stream in front of him, a stronghold brightened by dark flames could be seen with several dwarf witches patrolling its periphery while holding torches. This should be a large-scale dwarf witch tribe, the legendary stronghold of the dwarf witch race's king. Li Yunmu exclaimed in low voice. He hadn't expected that while rushing away from the camp, he had surprisingly taken the path to the dwarf witch race's core zone. Should he start killing or not? Li Yunmu didn't think about it too much and directly returned the control back to the shadow. If he became scared now, then he won't be able to do anything in future. The shadow could be resurrected 3 times in a day. Since it could be resurrected, then he didn't need to think much about this. Instantly, Li Yunmu's courage was bolstered and he launched automatic hack. His consciousness returned back to the main body. Within his consciousness the system had already projected everything in Shadow's field of view, which could be considered as true 3-dimensional projection, with more details compared to when it was shown on the computer screen. He could see that after he had returned the control to the shadow, its movements were still according to the hack mode. It directly charged towards a patrol on the periphery of the King's Mountain stronghold and launched its attack. Ding! Your shadow had begun the attack and is currently engaged in battle with a patrol formed of several tens of blade dwarf witches. Your shadow has launched the violent blade critical leap strike on this patrol squad and continuously launched 15 strikes, exterminating all the squad members of this patrol. You have obtained 70 experience and ability points. Your shadow's attack on this patrol of blade dwarf witches has attracted the attention of the King Grade Stronghold, causing even more blade dwarf witch patrols to rush over here. After closely watching the shadow's initial assault and independent killing of monsters, Li Yunmu withdrew from the consciousness allowing the shadow to continue the hack. He hadn't slept whole night yesterday and it was impossible for him to stay awake to pay attention to its movement now. He immediately fell asleep. Time peacefully passed while he was sleeping. Early in morning the next day, Li Yunmu had woken up earlier than others today. After catching up on sleep, his brain and body had both been refreshed and were full of energy. His whole body seemed to be radiant and full of vigor. He seemed to have forgotten about something and entered his consciousness. Ding! Your shadow has already died 3 times, which is the limit of resurrection. Following which, it has entered sleeping mode and is waiting to be resurrected. Estimated time for resurrection is 17 hours 46 minutes. Ding! Yesterday, you have obtained a total of 3600 experience and ability points by killing monsters during the hack. Ding! You have obtained 11 ordinary flux energy crystals and 1 black flux energy crystal yesterday by killing monsters during the hack. Ding! After accumulating the required number of proficiency points, your insect step had been promoted to the 3rd layer experience makes progress easy state. Ding! After accumulating the required number of proficiency points, your cricket cut kick had been upgraded by 2 layers, attaining the 3rd layer experience makes progress easy state. Ding! Your critical leap strike has been upgraded to the 2nd layer's small success state. Ding! Your arrow evasion has obtained 136 proficiency points and requires 2864 more proficiency points to reach the 6th layer. Ding! Yesterday, you have comprehended Charged Assault Foundation skill. Presently, it is at the initial level. Using the Charged Assault skill, for a short time, will allow your movement speed to be increased by 30% and attack damage by 30% on the first strike after launching the assault. The duration of charging as well as the strength of the first strike will be restricted by the host's flux energy strength. Ding! Yesterday, you have independently comprehended Escaping Danger Foundation skill. Presently, you are at the initial level. When Escaping Danger skill is put to use, your movement speed will get a momentary boost of 50%, the duration will depend on the host's flux energy strength. Ding! Yesterday, you have independently comprehended Danger Critical Strike. This skill can be classified as a special boost skill and doesn't need to be upgraded. Its strength will be restricted by the host's flux energy strength. The required conditions to launch the Danger Critical Strike is that the host must be in desperate straits and surrounded by many enemies. Congratulations, yesterday, you had unleashed Danger Critical Strike, successfully killing a second-layer dwarf wizard of the King-grade dwarf witch tribe, causing one-dimensional box to drop. When Li Yunmu entered his consciousness sea again at dawn, he discovered that a great event had happened while his shadow was killing monsters yesterday. Hearing the successive notifications from the system, his whole body almost lost the ability to support himself. Shadow's 3 lives had been lost. Now, the shadow has entered sleeping mode to wait for resurrection. Furthermore, he had also obtained 3600 experience and ability points, which made him extremely shocked. It must be known that when he had used the hack machine the first time and killed a mid-sized dwarf witch tribe, he had only obtained approximately 1000 experience and ability points. But now, he had obtained nearly thrice the amount he did the first night. A single dwarf witch monster could be said to have grade 7 strength, so 3600 experience points meant that his shadow must have killed at least 500 dwarf witch monsters yesterday. What shocked him even more was the successive notifications about comprehending new skills and upgrading the previous ones. Apart from arrow evasion and violent blade, all the other comprehended skills have been upgraded to the next level or higher. Even his insect step had risen to the 3rd level. When he uses the 3rd level insect step, it would become even more strange and provide more powerful boost. Apart from this, he had also comprehended 3 more skills: Charged Assault, Escaping Danger, and Danger Critical Strike. Heavens, what kind of battle did the shadow experience yesterday that it had even comprehended Escaping Danger and Danger Critical Strike? Pitiful shadow! Although he hadn't seen it himself, Li Yunmu knew that the shadow must have experienced an absolutely despairing life and death battle yesterday. No, 4 absolutely despairing life and death battles, since the shadow's 3 extra lives had all been used up. Even with the triple-layered defense of Admiralty cover, copper body, and battle soldier equipment, it had been killed 4 times. Li Yunmu suddenly felt that he had greatly underestimated this dwarf witch king grade stronghold. System, can you replay the scenes just before the shadow died yesterday? Chapter 50, Shadow Spirit. System, is it possible that for me to see the circumstances before the shadow's death? Li Yunmu requested the system. Yes, the host's request is possible. The host can even request the complete replay of yesterday's shadow hack. The system quickly replied. The system's intelligence upgrade was completely worth it. It had also gained the function of recording and replay. But how could Li Yunmu have the time to watch the complete replay? He could only watch the part he requested. Within the consciousness sea, the scenes before the shadow's death for each of the 4 times were projected, miserable and cruel. After seeing them, Li Yunmu remained silent for a long time. For the first death of the shadow, it died while being surrounded by several patrols. After the shadow attacked the first squad, more and more squads from the surroundings joined the fray. Although the shadow had triple-layer defense stacked, the number of the attacking dwarf witch monsters were too enormous, resulting in deaths, one batch after the other. Under the unceasing assault by blade dwarf witch patrols from all sides, it was finally trapped within the encirclement. Following which, it killed 123 blade dwarf witches before its battle soldier equipment shattered. Sure enough, Li Yunmu couldn't believe his eyes. The battle soldier equipment, after being hacked by countless sharp blades, shattered. Although the battle equipment on the S.H.A.D.O.W had been condensed after synchronizing the data with the real thing which Lee Yunmu had, a duplicate was still a duplicate, it still didn't have the durability of the original thing. After losing the defense of the battle equipment, very quickly, the S.H.A.D.O.W continuously sustained injuries and bled. Although it still had Admiralty cover and copper body which had an extremely powerful defense, but even if each blade dwarf witch's strike only left a small cut on it, after countless attacks, the S.H.A.D.O.W still died under the assault of the group of dwarf witches. Lee Yunmu could clearly see that after the S.H.A.D.O.W lost the defense of the battle soldier equipment, its personality completely transformed and it realized that it had to flee. However, what was called a sea of monsters other this was. Under the repeated attack by the surrounding monsters, the S.H.A.D.O.W finally failed in escaping and died for the first time. After 10 minutes, the S.H.A.D.O.W resurrected and once again begun to charge and launch an attack towards the King's Mountain stronghold. This time, the S.H.A.D.O.W had learned from its mistake and avoided being trapped by monsters, constantly rushing all around the place. It kept on nimbly moving around and had killed more than 100 blade dwarf witches, which finally alarmed the other kinds of dwarf witches of the king's stronghold, and a large number of poison arrow dwarf witches surrounded it. Under the unceasing rain of arrows, the S.H.A.D.O.W once again fell down within a pool of blood. The third death, however, made Lee Yunmu slightly more serious. During the third attack, the S.H.A.D.O.W learned successive lessons from the previous 2 times. This time, it silently sneaked within a group of poison blade witches and went on a killing spree, unleashing violent blade. Because of the purge of monsters the previous 2 times, by the third time, a large number of the surrounding patrols were finally used up. Large quantities of blade and poison dwarf witches had died. This finally provoked the elite battle squads of the king's stronghold. This monster tribe sent a total of 3 elite squads to hunt down the S.H.A.D.O.W, and at this time, the S.H.A.D.O.W comprehended the escaping danger skill and quickly departed from the scene. Following which, the S.H.A.D.O.W returned back quietly and attacked the King Grade stronghold again. But this time, the S.H.A.D.O.W couldn't escape because the King Grade stronghold unleashed a unique monster. Each of the 3 elite squads had an enormous devil mastiff which ended up catching the S.H.A.D.O.W, and the S.H.A.D.O.W died after being torn by these devil mastiffs. When Lee Yunmu looked at this scene, he wrinkled his brows as he hadn't expected that this King Grade dwarf witch tribe could surprisingly domesticate this kind of terrifying dimensional beast. These devil mastiffs, each of them was nearly at grade 18, on the verge of entering the 2nd layer, Black Crystal. The strength of dimensional beasts was far more terrifying compared to humans of the same level. Being hunted by these devil mastiffs, the S.H.A.D.O.W didn't have the ability to flee with its life intact. Reality was reality, it was not a game. The dwarf witches of the king's stronghold were also not idiots. Being attacked by this mysterious creature again and again, the security of the whole tribe had been increased several notches. When the S.H.A.D.O.W appeared for the 4th time, its attack failed. The enemy had made preparations in advance to face him. The 4th time, the S.H.A.D.O.W was killed under the assault of 3 devil mastiffs and bombardment of fireballs by several dwarf wizards. At this desperate moment, the S.H.A.D.O.W finally exploded with power, and it gained a sudden understanding of danger. Critical strike. 3rd layer insect step was unleashed as it advanced towards them. Instead of retreating and without caring for its injuries, the S.H.A.D.O.W unleashed the violent blade critical leap strike on the chief dwarf wizard. 15 continuous strikes stacked atop of each other, chopping down 8 bodyguards by the side of the chief dwarf wizard. It then jumped up high into the air and landed a critical leap strike, directly leaping into the encirclement and successfully beheading the chief dwarf wizard. This also was the source of harvest of the only black flux energy crystal. It turns out that this danger critical strike wasn't specifically a battle skill, rather, it was blended within the final leaping strike of the violent blade critical leap strike. This final chop's strength was the sum of the first 15 strikes of violent blade and the extra damage from jumping. Thus, this was called danger critical strike. The strength of all the previous chops summed up in this one critical strike. This made danger critical strike the most formidable attack Lee Yunmu had, one whose equivalence he hadn't seen before. The frightening thing was that even the highest level A-grade battle skill was inferior compared to this boosting skill. But unfortunately, the conditions required to use it were extremely harsh. No one would be willing to encounter such situation where he would have to be pushed to the utmost desperate state to launch this strike with full force. At the same time, from the body of this chief dwarf wizard, dropped the second dimensional box from the day he started hacking. After this, the replay ended. Li Yunmei watched the whole video of the shadow dying 4 times, feeling as if he himself experienced several life and death battle, boldly and fearlessly, silently battling, fighting and fleeing, then escaping with his life from the encirclement of sinister enemies, then facing dangerous counterattacks and finally staking his life with despair to use the fatal strike comprehended on the spot to kill the enemy's most powerful chief and dying together with him. For some unknown reason, Li Yunmei felt his heart ache. Seeing the shadow dying successively 4 times, he felt as if he himself was experiencing all this. He could clearly sense the shadow's despair at the final moment and the yearning it had for this world. System, clearly the shadow could go through rebirth, but why am I feeling so strange, as if it had died for real? Looking at the replay, Li Yunmei didn't feel good in his heart. The shadow cannot truly die, only within a day, when shadow had successively used all its lives, then the shadow spirit which is used as the shadow soul is truly dead. It will live again next day and the shadow will be established on another shadow spirit then. The system turned silent after the reply. Shadow spirit. This was the first time Li Yunmei had heard this term. The host can think of it like this: humans have souls, the shadow has this shadow spirit. Oh, so it's like this. Then is there a method to retrieve the shadow spirit of yesterday's shadow? For some unknown reason, perhaps because he was influenced by the shadow's final moments of despair, Li Yunmei couldn't bear to lose it and was hoping for some kind of miracle. Li Yunmei felt like he had lost something important, he felt completely depressed.